Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Bruna. I work at the International Relations Department at Unis Group, and today we'll be presenting the event Global Class Academic Writing. And first, I would like to thank Moises for accepting our invitation and for all partners that have shared this event on their academic environment. And this is the second day of the event, and we have here a guest speaker, Moisés de Lima. He's an English as a second language teacher at Bethel International Organization in Jiangsu, China. He graduated from Fort Hays State University with a master's degree in English, concentrated in TESOL. His research discusses the challenges of second language writers in academic contexts, particularly in the USA. He worked as a graduate consultant for the FHSU Writing Center, assisting students in their writing process, revising, editing, and formatting papers, following different writing styles and guidelines. The presentation is on the topic Fundamentals of APA Style and Journal Publishing. Professor Moises, the screen is all yours.
Thank you so much, Bruna. Hello, everyone. How are you all today? As Bruna said, my name is Moises de Lima, and it's an honor for me to be here today, and especially to talk about writing. So, thank you for joining me. I'll try to keep it short. I don't know if I'll get it. And I don't know what time it is where you are right now. I'll say that, like, here in Brazil, it's lunchtime, and I may or may not be hungry. I'm just kidding. I am very interested in this discussion about writing, especially like in the ways writing in English empowers and enable English as an additional or second language writers to achieve their educational, professional, and personal goals. I see writing as subversive. Um, and it's very meaningful and honorable that you are interested in making your thoughts known publicly, that you have the courage to try to break into a system that has a code that's so hard to crack. So you're doing this by studying the system like you're doing here today. So congratulations, like this shows a lot of bravery and courage from you. As a brief background, before I address the topic of today's presentation, I've been teaching English for about 13 years now. So I have a degree in language teaching from a federal university in Brazil, and a master's degree in English concentrated in the teaching of English to speakers of other languages from Fort Hays State University in the state of Kansas in the United States. Why am I telling you this? English has been an important part of my life, my education, my career for several years. However, most of the courses I attended and classes I taught focused on speaking, reading, grammar, but it wasn't until I started my master's program in the United States that I realized the importance of writing. And writing plays a crucial role in the US academic culture. And it's not just like writing for the sake of writing. I don't want to make any generalizations, but based off on my personal experience and also on my research, in the US, from like very young age, students start to be exposed to a writing culture. It's like they talk and think about writing even when they are very little, in school. And so when they get to college, most have at least like some idea of, for example, what a thesis statement is, or what MLA, APA are, or like how to write a paragraph and things like that. Like they have something. Of course, this something that they have doesn't necessarily mean that they will succeed or that it will be easy for them because of their native language and cultural background. So like what I mean is it may not be easy, but it certainly makes it easier. And as second language writers, sometimes the students and new authors have done or like have known or very little knowledge regarding concepts and ways to talk about writing in their native language. So imagine in a foreign language, such as English. So if you just like fast forward to the difficulties graduate students face to cope with the demands and pressure of their graduate programs, or even their desire or needs to publish in English, we'll be able to notice that the language barriers added to the lack of knowledge regarding the academic writing culture and writing expectations will sometimes or often lead second language writers to fall behind when they are trying to succeed in their academic classes or in having their manuscripts accepted and published by journals in English. So, like back to my story, I received a scholarship to study in the U.S., and as a part of my scholarship, I worked for the university's writing center during my graduate program. There, I provided writing consultations to domestic and international students. So imagine, I myself was in my classes struggling to get my papers done, but I had to find a way to help other students too, and not only like the international or non-native English speakers, but also the domestic students. And this experience led me to develop some ideas and beliefs about writing. So, but before I share my ideas with you, I will follow Dr. Soika's great approach from yesterday lecture, and I'll try to interact with you a little bit so you don't get like too bored and fall asleep during my presentation. By the way, Dr. Soika, thank you very much for yesterday's presentation. I had an awesome time. I believe you were here yesterday. You told me you would be here, so I'm not sure. Maybe you were here. So I had an awesome time yesterday, like learning from you through Scooby Doo and like this dynamic and funny way you presented yesterday. So thank you so much. And the only problem is that after your presentation yesterday, like because you set the bar so high that at the end of your presentation, I was like, oh no, my presentation is not that fun. And so I try to add a few things here and there to my presentation to try to keep up with you, Dr. Simone. So back to the topic. So yeah, so I'm curious to know some things from you. So I'll ask you some questions and ask you to please type your answers in the chat. It doesn't need to be anything like really elaborate, just like whatever comes to your mind, okay? So my first question to you would be, what is the first word that comes to your mind when you think about writing? You know, it can be pretty much like anything, okay? I will try to follow your answers on my phone, okay? So what is the first word that comes to your mind when you think about writing? Okay, I'm not sure I can see the answers. Uh, yeah, I can't, Emerson, can you help me? I don't know where the answers are.
Yeah, I will help you.
Okay.
So you can also see here on the right side, see comments.
Okay, okay. Sure, sure. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
My pleasure.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So yeah. So some yes, okay. So some people think that writing is related to grammar, to thesis, to work, ideas. So this is really good, Larissa. To subject. Okay, imagination. Yeah, so we have some very good ideas here on like things that are related to writing. So I really like those that said that like writing is related to ideas and imagination, thoughts. Okay, my second question would be, when do you write? So bear in mind that I'm not asking like necessarily like when you write academically or anything like that. Just like when do you write? Okay, you can type your answers in the chat, please. When, like, in which situations do you usually need to write? Okay, at work, emails at work. Okay, some people write on their phone, post for social media. Okay, good. um, when Larissa, you were really good. Look, when I want to fix something on my mind or organize my mind, that's kind of like what I do too, Larissa. To fix something, like to organize my ideas. A thesis, you see, a doctorate thesis, email, college. Okay, yeah, good job. So you see, we sometimes think that like writers are people who write academic papers, or people who are published. But if you write, you are a writer, right? It doesn't matter what, like if you write on social media, if you write on Twitter, on Facebook, or if you like Diego just said, writing like a doctorate thesis. If you write, you are a writer, right? But and then the last and most important, I'd say, question that I would like to ask you is like, why do you write? So this third question and these pictures are from an event we put together at my former university to engage people in the discussion about writing. That's like pretty much what I'm trying to do here today. So like, why do you write? Okay, so to remember something so I don't forget, Bruna, good. For a master's degree, okay. So see in the let me see here. So in these pictures, it was like there are several pictures there, but in these pictures, these people said they write is a like the writing is a process of discovery. And this other girl said to express myself and my emotions. And then we have here several answers to answer questions in my mind. Very good. To state something, to avoid, to forget and arrange it. Okay, expose ideas, points of view. Very good, very good. So like there are many reasons why we write, or reasons why we should write. And I asked you these questions because as students and non-native speakers of English, we might sometimes feel scared or incapable of writing in English, as if for some reason it was not for us. You know what I mean? Like as if it like impossible, or if we were somewhat unauthorized to write in English, which is not true, right? I will talk to you about the APA and journal publishing today, as I promised in the title of my presentation. So don't worry about that. But the most important message I can leave you with today, even like if at the end of the presentation you still have questions about APA, and you probably will, is a message of encouragement and empowerment. I hope you leave this presentation willing to give writing a try, and also with some knowledge and tools to succeed in writing whatever, like whatever you write, or for whatever reason you are here today, right? Like looking for looking to improve and increase your knowledge regarding like the writing process and everything. Um, so I told you before that I wanted to hear from you first, and I would like to share some ideas that I have, some thoughts I have on writing myself. Okay, so today, if you ask me like, what comes to your mind, Moises, what comes to your mind when you think about writing? So like first I'll tell you that now I see writing as a mode of learning. As a scholar Janet Emig puts it, writing is like directly linked to learning. So she believes that it uniquely corresponds to certain powerful learning strategies. Writing can link different learning skills like speaking, reading, and listening. So, like, but unfortunately, I don't know about Romania and or other parts of the world, but at least here in Brazil, writing is probably the last ability students are exposed to when they are learning English. I mean, uh, not writing as like in grammar, but writing as in sharing ideas through written words. That's what I mean by writing. And then um, this scholar Janet Emig says that like writing is a mode, is a way to learn, and sometimes we don't take advantage of this strategy. The second thing comes to my mind when I think about writing is like writing is a process, not a product. So Dr. Donald Murray would explain it. That's like writing is a process of discovery, and the final product, the paper, the article, should arise just like as a result of this learning process. Uh, which leads to my next thought on writing. That like I see writing as a social activity. Um, and as Dr. Simona Soika mentioned yesterday, sharing and getting feedback from peers, professors, editors should be like a common practice in writing. So I'll tell you that like when you were stuck trying to write your paper in English or any other language, talk to people, share, because writing is a social activity. When we see the final version of a published journal, for example, we are doing our research and then we come across a certain journal and you're like, oh my God, this is so well written. We forget that this piece of writing went through several drafts and reviews before it was accepted and published. And last, like the last but not least thought that I have on writing is that like now I see writing, more specifically academic writing, as foreign to everyone. So what do I mean by that? For example, imagine the speakers of your native language, be it like Romanian, English, Portuguese. Um, and so like imagine all the speakers of your language or of your native language. So like can all of them write an academic paper? So like if you pick somebody like randomly on the street, can you be sure that this person will be able to write an academic paper? The answer will probably no, right? So like it's because without proper training and exposure to the specificities of academic genres, people can't meet the expectations of this type of writing. So if you're writing on Facebook or Twitter, fine. But the academic writing has some specificities that require training and practice. So this is not because you were a non-native speaker of English. It applies to North Americans, English people, Australians, South Africans, anybody. Because learning English as a child it might just like speed up the process of learning about academic writing, but nobody learns how to write in the academic way as a child, right? So I guess I can say that like academic writing is difficult for everyone, native or no native, okay? And then like having said that, I'd like to move to our discussion about like formatting styles and journal publishing. And I'd like to start this discussion with a question. So, like, are you familiar with the formatting styles used in your country, and what are they? Okay, like, for example, I mean, I can say the one that we use in Brazil, but what about? Are you familiar with the formatting styles, like the writing styles, the way you format your paper in your country? Yes or no? If so, like, what are they called? Yeah, so Diego just said yes. Clover just said that in Brazil we use A, B, and T. That's right. Idris, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. It's like IEEE. Melik, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. I apologize. Use APA style. Okay. All right. So you see, like, different countries and different countries, they have like different formatting styles. Um, and so so I'm not sure like about other parts of the world, but in Brazil we have like a standard formatting style called, like, that's as some people just said, A, B, and T. But in the US they have like multiple styles depending on the discipline. Okay, so it's not like just one standard style. So it's the different styles depending on the discipline. And as Melik mentioned, it's like APA is one of them, right? Um, and okay, just a second. So APA is one of them, one of these styles. So okay, give me 1 second. I just got lost here. Um, yeah. And like each style has their own guidelines, right? Usually, like, thoroughly explained in detailed manuals. For example, the American Psychology Association, known as APA, is used in education, psychology, and sciences. I believe this is the closest to AB&T that we use in Brazil. But there's also some other manuals, like the Chicago Manual of Style, used in business, history, and maybe fine arts. The Modern Language Association Handbook, known as MLA style, used to. So these are like some of the style manuals that I got to work with while I was working in the writing center in the United States. So MLA, so is used by like the humanities, like in literature, and also like the AP, among others. So APs for like journalism and like media in general. So I have another question for you. So based on your major, which style guides do you use, or would you probably use to write if you're writing a paper in the United States? Would you use like APA, the Chicago Manual style, MLA, AP? What style would you have to use? Would you probably use? Based off on what you study. Okay, APA. Clover said APA. Okay. Uh, MLA. Okay. Bruno says MLA. So, for example, when I was in the US, I was in the English department. So, housed in the English department, we had linguistics classes and some other classes that were like more literature related. So, for some of my papers, I had to write using APA, and some of my papers I had to write using MLA, which is like really complicated, right? You have to go back and forth trying to learn about like the each about the guidelines of each style. Um, Larissa doesn't know. What do you study, Larissa? Uh, what's your major? Okay, I think there's a certain like I think there's a delay in the answers. But yeah, let's see if Larissa tells me what major she's in. Okay, so um, okay. depending on the site. Okay, so I believe like the most important concepts regarding academic writing in general were discussed by Dr. Simone yesterday. Right, like such as quoting, paraphrasing, summarizing, plagiarism, etc. However, like some professors and editors tend to be very strict. So like these things are very important, quoting, paraphrasing, they're like the most important. But some professors and journals, they tend to be very strict about formatting styles as well, which frustrates writers when they receive like bad grades or have their manuscripts rejected by journals, right? So, of course, you don't have to buy these manuals, although some students and researchers do so. But these organizations often update these books and change a few guidelines with a certain frequency. For example, like the APA manual is in its seventh edition, which was published in 2019. Um, so yeah, so some of the writing centers in other writing organizations often make these guidelines available and keep them like up to date. So you don't need to buy the manual because some websites, writing centers, and other organizations keep like an up to date review of these. Guidelines and these manuals to make it easier for students to find the information they need. Um, so a great example, and this is like something that I think you should probably write down because it's a very good recommendation, is the Purdue Writing Lab. At the writing center in the United States, and like when I write in English, I use this all the time because you can just like look up for the information you need, and it's like easily, it's very like user friendly. So there you can find like free resources, including like writing and teaching writing, research, grammar and mechanics, style guidelines, like content related to an ESL, like language learn, for like job search, professional writing. So it's like a very thorough website. So I would really recommend that you take a look at like Purdue Wall. And so like what I'm going to do today is like to share a few basic APA guidelines with you. So like note that this is not something that you necessarily need to memorize, unless you are attending like a first year composition class or some other like writing class, and your professor decides to quiz you on that. Like some writing classes and professors quiz the students on the styles. Okay, like so how would you write a reference for a book in using APA? So like if you're taking a class and your professors that maybe you have to memorize, but other than that, it's just for like when you're writing your papers, you don't need to memorize because these sources are easily accessible and available to you. It's like a copy of the manual or a reliable website like Purdue will probably be like enough to help you format your papers correctly. And like you know some professors and scholarly journals, they might have their like on top of these styles, some professors and journals, they might have their own instructions and expectations, and those always overrule any style guide. So for example, your professor asks you to write a paper using APA, but then he changes something. So like, what your professor says will always overrule what the style guide says. Yes, so let's just talk a little bit about some fundamentals of APA style. So APA style regulates stylistics, which is like the distinct styles that language is used based on a certain context and situation. So this is what stylistics is. For example, the language you use should talk about politics, about religion, and etc. So APA has its expectations regarding the style, vocabulary, and like etc. for like APA papers. Um, Also, there's like in-text citations in referencing, as we saw yesterday that like Dr. Solika shared with us a little bit about like in-text citations and referencing. And I will briefly cover this later in this presentation, not like thoroughly, but just a little bit. And then I also like papers written following like the APA style should also, so there's like these rules. So there's like very objective, and like you have just to follow what they're saying. For example, be typed, double spaced. So, for example, in some places, people might be used a single space or 1.5 spacing. In APA, you have to use double space. I have an example after, but let me just finish this part first. And then like you have like 1 inch margins. So 1 inch is about like 2.55 centimeters. Use 10 to 12 like the font size. So in a standard font like Time New Roman and things like that. They're like not exactly one specific, but these are like standard font. And be printed, so just like if you print it on a standard size paper. So as you can see in this sample paper, the space between the lines bigger, okay? Yeah, let me just move on to the sample paper. So yeah, so you can see in the sample paper here, the space between lines is bigger and the margins are thick. So this is pretty much what like an APA paper should look like. Okay. And yeah, so moving on, APA also regulates that the language you use be clear, be specific in descriptions and explanations, concise, like condensed, and plain. Use simple, descriptive adjectives, and minimize figurative language. So, like, what I mean by this is clarity, concision, plainness, make up as a very important characteristic of academic writing. So different languages and cultures approach writing differently. So like, however, when you're writing in English, it's essential that you bear in mind that academic and APA writing should be like clear, concise, and plain. For example, I tend to think that when I write in Portuguese, like myself, and I write in Portuguese, there are some expectations that are culture bound. You know what I mean? Like I naturally tend, when I'm writing Portuguese, I naturally tend to be like more gentle, or to sound more gentle with my reader, because like I'm afraid I might come across as being rude or something like that. But in English, I have the impression that like the briefer and directer you are, the better. And it's not rude. So AP writing should avoid like what they call wordness, which is like the use of too many unnecessary words to say something simple. So the fewer words you use, the better. And I should also, it should also be like plain, and as in like objective, and not showing like too many emotions, I would say. So like so many adjectives and adverbs can often be like left out to make the writing as simple as possible. So for example, when you use things like extremely or immensely, those things, they're like sound very emotional and extreme. So APA writing tries to usually be like plain. And I like to think of it like, as you can see, following like these pictures, I like to think of it as like a minimalistic decor versus like a kiddish decor, to make it easier to understand. So for example, if I asked you just in the chat, just write one or two, which one would you think? It's a very simple question, but like one or two, which one would you think that's like would better represent an APA paper? Number one or number two? Yeah, absolutely, right. Yeah, so yeah, of course. Number one would probably be like what APA writing looks like. You see, there's like because it's practical, not like embellished, and he has like just the essential, plain and simple, right? So this is what like APA writing looks like. And APA writing also tends to use like first person pronoun, as you can see in this next slide, instead of third person ones for the same reasons. The same reason I mentioned before is like, uh, for example, if you say we conducted an experiment instead of the authors conducted an experiment, it sounds like first person sounds more direct, more objective. And APA also prefers active voice to passive voice uh, for the same reason, because it sounds like more direct and also use fewer words. Fewer words. For example, we asked participants questions. The participants have been asked questions by the researchers. Like the number of words that you use when you have like a passive structures, you have like use more words. So it's preferable that you make it shorter. Okay, trying to be like more direct. And like, yeah, so this is some of the ideas related to APA. On top of that, I have an example here of another paper. Like every page of your essay should include the page number in the like upper right? And like if it's a professional paper, a page header, shorten title as cap in the paper. Yeah, so what they mean by this is like you see that you have a running header on the top left, right? And yeah, it's like awesome example of APA paper. Okay, so this is a running header. So it's capitalized and put in the upper left hand corner, while the page number should be found in the upper right hand corner. So this is like the formatting of an APA paper. You see that if it's not a professional paper, just like for a class, you don't necessarily need, unless your professor asks to have like the header. Okay. Also, yeah, so like yeah, so this is about like some formatting regarding so you see that you have the margin, and then the spacing, and on top the header and the page. Okay, and talking about in-text citation, some things that Dr. Simon talked about yesterday, they can be like short or long, right? And I think it's similar to Portuguese. That's why I said like APA is the closest to what we have in Brazil. So if it's a direct quote, you have like year of publication and page number, right? The page number should also be added. While like paraphrased excerpts, so Dr. Simona talked a lot about this yesterday, just require the number. You don't necessarily just require like the year, right? Not necessarily the page number. Paraphrasing, summarizing, and synthesized information is often preferred, instead of like directly quoting from authors, because when you do that, you show that you can understand and articulate connections with your own text, within your own text. But like, no matter what kind of citation you use, as mentioned in yesterday's presentation, the source of information but always be found. So this is very important, but must always be found in your reference list, following the guidelines based on the material type, number of authors, and etc. As you can see, yeah, so I have a table here. Yeah, so as you can see in this table, see like depending on the source and number of authors and things like that, the way you put it in the reference. So I will not go through like each one of them, but yeah, so you need to follow the guidelines based off on the type of material you are using. Again, you don't have to know this by heart. You can just figure out what type of material you're using, and then follow some examples and instructions, like on Purdue All, for instance. So suppose, let's just take one example here. Suppose your source is an article in an electronic source. Okay, yeah, just in the table. Okay, yes, I think is the fourth on the table, the fourth line, and the third column. Okay, so it's like your source is in an article in an electronic journal. You will have, look at that, you have like author's last name, first and middle initials, and then like second author, maybe third author, and then year of publication, period, title of the article. So like these are things that you have to pay attention, because professors and journal, like the editors, sometimes they're very picky about this. So if you make like a little mistake, that may be a problem, you know. So see, like title of the article, and then title of the periodical in like italicized, you see. And then there's things like the if you have two words, the first and the second words are like capitalized, but the preposition of is not, something like this. um, and then you might have like, you have volume number, also italicized, issue number, pages, and something that you might have, something that they call like a DOI. That's like some sort of like electronic registration register. Okay, so let's just try to practice this a little bit, see if we can do it ourselves. Okay, so I select an article from an electronic journal. um, and of course, I know you can't italicize anything here, but you know, let's just see who can do this. It's like our next slide. The reference for this article, and send it to me in the chat. Okay, so I have like what you have to have um, uh, at the bottom. Okay, and I'd like you to try to cite, to reference this source using APA. Okay, I'll give you like a couple of minutes to try to work on that and send on in the chat. Yeah, so remember to put like last name first and then initials, year between like brackets, title of the article, the periodical, like the yeah. So I know it's like not that quick to do that. I just wanted you to give it a try. Um, yeah, so you can just check in my next slide if you're like on the right path. Okay, so you had like Adam as like last name CT, and Apple, I don't know how to pronounce that, EPEL, and ES, okay, 2007, okay, stress eating and the reward system, okay, psychology and behavior, okay. So yeah, so Jose, you almost got it right. You see like psychology and behavior. So like behavior should also be capitalized, right? Like the second word, psychology and behavior should be capitalized. And then we have 91, that's like italicized. Number 4, okay, the pages, and then of course here you couldn't do this, but after that you can just like copy and paste the DOI, which can be a number or a website. Good job, Jose, good job. Yeah, you know, it's not that difficult if you follow like a model, you know, like an example. Okay, then moving on, I just want to really quickly, I would like to talk to you about journal publishing. And I mean, if you have any questions, any comments, we will. I'll give you the opportunity to ask me or make your comments after the presentation. Okay. Um, so talking about journal publishing, as you might know, like getting your work published is tough. You know, it's a tough task. However, it's often required from graduate and maybe professional, some professionals to publish, you know, in academic article. And sometimes it might sound impossible to break through this barrier, you know. So I've seen students, they're like, they struggle, and then like they need to publish something if they want to like be accepted in a graduate program, like in a PhD or something like this. So sometimes it's a struggle, and some people might think that's like, oh my god, I can never do this, I can't break through this. But you know, there's not like a recipe or anything that we can follow. But I'll try to share some ideas with you, and they might be helpful. Okay. Uh, so the so it's first important that you know the process. Like first, you submit the manuscript for publication. So that's what you do first. So you write, you try to edit and do your best, and then you submit the manuscript, that's like this first version, for publication. So you have to choose the right journal, that like, and the right publication, the like periodical that will you think your manuscript will fit in, you know. Then your manuscript goes through the journal's editor's preliminary read, you know. So the editor reads, and then after this, if you pass the second stage, they send your articles, the journal, to like for like what they call a peer review, the peer review stage. So your work will be read and received. You will receive feedback from people who are knowledgeable on the topic. And thus will be able to evaluate the quality and also like the contributions of your work. So after that, your paper will be returned to the editor for what they call like a quick review. And then in this quick review, the editor will read the abstract, examine like the full manuscript, like read everything, scan the references. So that's what we were just talking about before. So like the editor will scan to see like if your references are good references, if they are using like the correct formatting. Okay. Scan tables and figures, and then after that, the editor will read like a page or two from each section of your paper to finally decide on what action should be taken. Okay. So as for like what action should be taken, your paper might be like, first thing that might happen is like in our next slide is your paper might be rejected, which is like very sad, I know. So this might happen in case it receives a very poor evaluation, especially regarding the basis of the fundamentals of your research, such as like your research questions, literature review methods, and things like that. But your work might also be rejected with invitation to revise and submit. So this is often seen as like the best case scenario, you know, because like getting your paper accepted after you like submit it for the first time is extremely rare. It's like it's almost impossible, right? So this invitation to submit means you will sometimes receive several pages of feedback and criticism that you need to observe carefully if you really want your paper to be accepted when you submit it again. Okay. And finally, acceptance. So acceptance is like what we all want when we submit a manuscript, but you know, it's like pretty much the stage in which your paper has been like is accepted after you successfully addressed and fixed whatever the journal and the peers pointed out. Okay, so like acceptance is not like you send it and it's immediately accepted. It means like, oh, you did a good job revising, fixing, addressing the concerns of the editor and the peers. So now your paper can be accepted. Um, some possible problems you might face, right? As I mentioned before, like inadequate review of literature. So like the scope of your literature review might also be like related to inappropriate citations. So this is like so it's I see this as like, for example, if your the problem is in your review, it's something that's a little review of literature, it's something that's a little more tricky to deal with, because maybe like the way you process the idea led you to think that that kind of literature review was good. But some things like citation, like it's very mechanical, so I think this is something that we really have to pay attention. So ambiguous research questions, so this is kind of difficult too. Poor writing style, and maybe like excessive length, so it's like if your paper is too long. And on the other hand, like you have better chances to get your paper published if you have in mind what is considered like features of substance and style by the journal, like what the journal or papers usually think is like really important. Uh, these features are related to like core ideas upon which your paper is developed, like the research questions that are posed, the ways in which they are conceptualized, and the methodological soundness in which like they are studied, like the way you develop, assess, and interpret your findings. Okay. Um, so I'm like moving towards to the end of our presentation, but like to improve your chances to get your paper published, there are certain things that you might consider. Like you might give yourself enough time. Don't try to rush. And try like to write something last. I know that we are busy, and sometimes it's difficult to overcome certain feelings like of frustration and procrastination, but try to give yourself enough time to work on your paper. Um, Ask for help, socialize, make it the social activity, because that's what writing is. Like target the right journal. So don't try to like send paper, like you write one paper, one article, and send it to every journal you can possibly think. Try to target like the right journal that can probably or possibly accept your paper. Follow instructions carefully, both about like the general format, or even like the expectations of the periodical. Okay. And don't be like we need to learn to accept and embrace criticism. So for example, as I mentioned before, in the invitation to resubmit your paper, I remember some of my professors, they received like 16 pages um, of criticism and feedback from peers that were actually like took the time to read and comment and suggest things. So this is like should be seen and as a positive thing. Okay. And resubmit as many times as you need. So if you have the chance to get it back and then fix more things, do so. And don't feel like personally attacked or offended. This is the normal process. Okay. Additionally, I think you should also remember that writing is a process. Okay, so not a product, is a process. And then in my last slide, I think I would say that like this is the process. It's not a linear process, but it's a process that writing goes through, like pre-writing, like thinking about the ideas, drafting, revising, editing, and before you publish, you do this like it's actually like not linear, so it's like a very messy process. So like for example, you write a paragraph, and then after you realize that maybe this paragraph would be a better fit for another part of your in another part of your paper. So like in this process, more important than like the final draft of your papers is like what you learned while you were working on it. You know what I mean? So like some authors often consider that, yeah, when I was in my master's I studied this. So some authors, they often consider that like a piece of writing is never finished. Eventually you might have to decide to make it public, like the last stage, because of a class requirement or a publication date, which doesn't mean that like you feel 100% satisfied what you have like in front of you at the end, but like you have to meet a deadline. So do your best, keep pressing, grammar, formatting, procrastination, fear, and so many other things might get on your way while you're trying to move on with your studies and your career. So try to be focused and disciplined, of course, but also be graceful with yourself too. Academic writing is like a foreign language to everyone, native or no native. So you just have to keep trying, keep exposing yourself to learn. Like, for example, while you're learning English, you have to keep trying, exposing yourself. Do it to academic writing as well. Okay, and I hope you finish this. I finished this presentation feeling like you are a bit more like confident and willing to try. Uh, if styles get, for example, if style gets in your way, like use Purdue. Just try to tackle the specific problems. So if it's style, use Purdue to guide you. If it's grammar, like use, I just put there the previous slide, this app that's called Grammarly. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's very helpful. It helps, like it points out some grammar mistakes and like some structure mistakes that you might have to revise before you submit your paper. So it's very good. I installed like the extension to my Chrome, and then it always like whenever I misspell something, Grammarly helps me fix it. Okay, so this is a great tool for proofreading. And if something else tries to stop you, I would say like remember that writing is a social activity. So talk to your peers, talk to your friends, to your professors, or like whoever is willing to listen to you. Doesn't necessarily need to be something that knows about the topic, but something that's willing to listen to you. So because sometimes when you just like let it out, you make sense of a lot of things, and it helps you write. Yeah. So like yeah. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I wish you all like the best of luck in your future endeavors, like your career, what you're trying to do with your life. And I'll pass it like to Bruna, I guess. But if you have any comments or questions, I'll be more than happy to try to address them now. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Moises. I think it will be very useful because what you said about being specific in writing, I tend to start writing and writing until I'm not focused anymore on what I should be really writing about. That's
Uh-huh.
a problem that I face every time. So it will be very useful. And I see some comments here, some questions. I
Okay.
will read now. Clauber said, interesting difference. In Brazil, writing tends to be a little more verbose, professor. I don't know if verbose would be the correct term.
Who said that? Uh,
Clauber.
Glober. Okay, let me try to find it. Uh, is it like towards the end? Uh,
Let me see. No, it was when you asked about number one and number two about
right
the
tends to be a
pictures.
little more. Uh, I don't know if would be the correct term. I don't really know. Okay, okay, like I mean like long-winded and yeah. Well, I'll say there's like different kinds of writing. So there's like they say that Portuguese is more like a spiral type of writing. So like we try to be gentle to the reader. So we go on talking about the reasons why we believe something is true, and then when we get to what we call a thesis statement, it's just like we almost don't have to state it because we already convinced the reader of what we want to say. However, in English, it's the opposite, right? You present your thesis, and after you go about like trying to give support and arguments to defend what you said. So I don't know if the prolix and long-winded would be the best way to describe it, but I'd say like it's definitely different. And for Brazilian students especially, I see that it was difficult for me to become more like intentional, objective, direct in my writing. Yeah.
Perfect. Marcia said, it's very common to write in passive voice in Brazil. I think that's the hardest thing to work when you are translating a text from Portuguese to English, even your own text. That's what
Yeah,
you said, right?
I agree. I agree, Marcia. That's something difficult. I think making your text shorter and more direct is, using fewer words, especially when you're writing in a second or additional language. It's usually difficult, because sometimes you don't know the specific vocabulary word you want to use. So you kind of like go around and around trying to explain. And this makes your text like wordy and too long, and passive voice is one of the so I would say that like when we talk about grammar, passive voice is already something that's like you use when you try to not identify the author of a certain action or something. So it's like it becomes more evasive already, just the structure of passive voice. So that's why I believe in APA writing, people, it's recommended that you try to be like, boom, just try to get to the point using like a more active structure. Which not like I wouldn't say this like you can never use. There's some certain situations you should probably use a passive voice, but it's something that we should probably try to avoid. Okay.
Simona is here with us today.
Hello.
She said in Romania as well, many papers are still written in passive voice.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think in Portuguese people write like that too, like using a lot of passive voice, right? So if you just count the number of words you use to write in passive versus the number of words you use to write in active voice, you'll see there's like it becomes way shorter when you write using active voice.
Uh, Idris asked, is it useful to programs like Mendeley? I don't
Uh,
know this program.
yeah, Idris, I don't think I'm familiar with it. But if you want to, let me just see here real quick what it might be. Uh, uh, yeah, okay. So I would say that I've seen not this one. I just read here that Mendeley is like based off on the UK. So I'm more familiar with sources and ways of writing in the US because that's where I lived. But there are definitely some websites and some programs that you can use to generate the reference list and things like that. They can be useful. I've seen like that even Word. Like Microsoft Word, sometimes you can use to create your references if you put the information there. I do believe it can make your life easier. It doesn't mean that you should believe them like 100%. You have always to go back and check to make sure that it's correct before you submit your manuscripts.
And he also asked, is it possible to send the same paper to more than one newspaper at the same time?
Yeah, like a journal. Well, it's that's what I said before. Some publication, the process of having your paper published is quite long. So it may take like months between like this process of revising and sending back and stuff like that. So what I'm saying is, so for example, if you get a paper accepted um, in two journals, for example, it might be problematic because like some journals say like you can't have the same paper published twice, right, in different journals. So in this process, because this process is very long, you may get in trouble trying to do that. Also, as I said, there's like the specific periodicals and specific publications. So you have to try to tackle what's like very specific for like what your paper is trying to discuss. I don't know. That's my point of view, but I'm not sure if it's like everyone would agree with that. Yeah.
And Jose asked, what was the most difficult part of writing your master's thesis back in the USA?
Jose, that was like that was really difficult. The process was really difficult, and it's like because you have to get out of your comfort zone and try like to because we call writing a higher thinking skill. So for example, when I was teaching English in Brazil, I used to think that like um, like knowing grammar was enough. So I was good at grammar. But when you start talking about writing, you see that like there are higher thinking skills, higher thinking processes, and writing is one of them. So when you have to do what Dr. Simone talked about yesterday, like paraphrase, summarize, and synthesize information, because that's what writing is about, right? You read something here, then you synthesize information and you connect that to your own ideas. So doing this is like a very complicated mental process. So I think my advisor in the US was very, like he wouldn't give me any answers. He would make questions all the time. So like when I brought problems to him, he would be like, ask questions and point the way, but never give answers. So this like at some point I was very mad at him. I was mad at the world. It's like a difficult process, but I finally got it, and it was like now I see how much that changed the way I think, not only about writing but about academia and about my worldviews in general.
Yeah, very interesting. I really like it. You asked something and then your answer was another
A
question.
question, exactly, exactly.
Simona said, would it help to send the paper to proofreading services like Elsevier, for example? I don't know if I pronounce it right.
Yeah, yeah, yes. So yeah, I mean, it's usually costly, like it costs. So I see that professors do this. My professors here in Brazil, some of my professors are professors at the university I went to here in Brazil. They would write in Portuguese and pay people to translate, or I believe that. Um, these services are very useful because writing is a social activity, right? So sometimes you can't see your own mistakes, and getting feedback from whatever source I think is very positive. It can be this kind of service, but it can be like a friend or it can be a professor. I think it's like just sharing, making writing public, understanding that writing is social activity is always positive.
And Marcia said, thank you so much for the seminar, Professor Moises and Professor Simona, for yesterday. And thanks to the International Department of UNIS for giving us this opportunity. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you for coming in and sharing with us here. Yes, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Malik also thanked us. Thank you so much for the presentation. Simone as well, thank you very much for encouraging us. I'm about to send a paper, and your presentation is very supportive right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to have. Okay, thank you, Larissa. I appreciate it. Yeah, yeah. So it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure to be here with you all today. Thank you, Bruna. You're always very friendly and kind. I really appreciate Unis for this opportunity, and I hope we can do this again at some point.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So, do we have more questions? Feel free to ask us. I think, Emerson already sent the link. So, okay, guys, that's it for the day. Don't forget to fulfill the attendance list, I'm sorry. The link is here in the chat. And you also need to have participated on yesterday's event to receive your certificate. And don't forget to subscribe in our YouTube channel, our social media, Instagram, Spotify, Facebook. And thank you so much, Moises, one more time. Simona, you're here watching us. Thank you one more time.
Thank
That's it.
you.
See you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.